Welcome to Studi.Live. Today we are going to cover the unit that is reproduction. Now in reproduction, what all chapters you need to see, let's see. Okay, so that's what is introduction to reproduction. So in reproduction, the first thing you are going to learn is reproduction in organisms. Reproduction in organisms. This means what? Generally, how reproduction occurs in unicellular and multicellular organisms, that we'll see here. Second, we'll see sexual reproduction in plants. What we'll see? Sexual reproduction in plants. Right? Now the third topic that you're going to cover is actually a crucial one because it is related to us, that is human reproduction. That is what? Human reproduction. And after human reproduction, once we know how the reproduction occurs, we also should know what measures should be taken to maintain the reproductive health. So these are all the chapters that you're going to cover in reproduction. Now, before getting into the whole concept of reproduction, there is one major or very important person you have to know, because he was the reason behind many botanical discoveries. Okay, so I'm talking about none other than Mr. Panchanan Maheshwari. Okay, I'm talking about whom? Mr. Panchanan Maheshwari. So I said his name is what? Panchanan Maheshwari. Now, who is this Panchanan Maheshwari and why you should know about him? He is one of the well-known botanists, and also I can say that he is one of the most important reason that you have a certain or a different subject known as botany. He has made well-known progress in botany, and he is also well-known for the departments embryology and tissue culture. So the reason he went into embryology and tissue culture is the reason you should know about him in this chapter. Now, what you should know more about him? Where was he born? He was born in Jaipur, Rajasthan, in the year 1904, and he died in the year 1966. Okay, so he was Panchanan Maheshwari. Now, what led him to become such a great botanist or such a great embryologist or such a great person in tissue culture? It was Mr. Woodgen. Okay, he was a professor who actually inspired him. Now, I am just mentioning this professor here because he was an inspiration to Dr. Panchanan Maheshwari. And the reason he became an inspiration was one simple sentence. When in his academic year, Mr. Woodgen just mentioned in his class that he wants to see his student who exceeds or excels him. And that was a sentence that motivated Dr. Panchanan Maheshwari. Now, to know about any topic, what you require is three major questions. And if you have the answer for these three major questions, that means you understand that one particular topic. So what are these three questions I'm talking about? The first question is what? So when I say what, I'm asking you all, what do you mean by reproduction? The first thing you should know is what is reproduction? So reproduction is nothing but it is a biological process in which an organism produces new organism similar to itself. That means what? In reproduction, there are many organisms in the world, you all know. Humans are one of a kind. There are many animals, there are many plants, and so on. So what happens is, the organisms here, they produce new organisms. That means we humans tend to produce more humans. That means when I am a parent, I will have a child. And that child, when he grows adult, he will also have a child. That means humans are producing humans. Correct? Dogs will keep producing dogs. Cats will keep producing cats, and so on. Each and every organisms, they keep producing new organisms that is exactly similar to itself. That is what is important. So reproduction is what? It is a biological process in which an organism produces new organisms similar to itself. Now the next question you should ask is, why do I need to study, or why do we have reproduction? Why is it important? So the next question I'm saying is, why? So when I say why do you require reproduction? What does reproduction do? It produces new organisms of the same species again and again, right? So those organisms again keep producing more organisms. That means they keep the cycle going. That means what happens is, the reproduction process here maintains the existence of organism, and also it prevents organisms from getting extinct. What does extinct means? Over. You all know, thousands of years ago we had dinosaurs, and they are nowhere now. They all are extinct organisms now because we don't see them now. So reproduction is actually very, very important to prevent this extinction of any organisms, right? So you know now what is reproduction. You know now why you need to know about reproduction, and why is reproduction important. The next thing, very important thing, that's what you are going to learn in this entire chapter, is how. How does reproduction occurs? How does reproduction occur? Now, when I say how does reproduction occur, I'm talking about the modes of reproduction. I'm talking about the modes of reproduction. So when I say the modes of reproduction, I have two kinds, I have two types, or I have two modes of reproduction. The first one is asexual mode, and the second one is a sexual mode. So what is the major difference between asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction? Right? So what is asexual reproduction? Asexual reproduction, in simple words, I can say, where only one parent is involved. Where only one parent is involved. That means there is no male, female. There is only one organism, and that organism is going to keep on producing new organisms. Correct? Now then, what is sexual reproduction? In sexual reproduction, what you have is, there are two parents who are involved. So whenever I say two parents are involved, obviously I am talking about two different sexes, that is male and female. So here there are two sexes, and here there are only one. That means here there is no gamete formation. No gamete formation. Obviously here there will be gametes, right? So here I can say gametes are present or are formed. What does this mean? Gametes, this is a new word. You should know what is gametes, right? What are these gametes? So gamete is nothing but, they are called as the sex cells or the reproductive cells in an organism. So this is all about reproduction. You should know that what is reproduction, why reproduction is important, and how does reproduction occur. So in the whole chapter, we are going to deal with how reproduction occurs. Asexual reproduction. So let us know what is asexual reproduction, right? So when I say asexual reproduction, what do you say? The first thing you say is no gametes are formed. And why no gametes are formed? The reason behind this is single parent is involved. Single parent is involved. And that is the major reason behind no gamete formation. Okay, when I say single parent is involved, that means there is only one organism that is going to keep on producing more organisms of the same species, right? So that is the reason there is no gamete formation. So I have written no gametes are formed. As I said, what are gametes? Gametes are reproductive cells or sex cells. So when does gamete get formed? When there are fusion of two or more cells. When I say fusion of two or more cells, I am saying that when two or more cells merge with each other, then fusion occurs. And so gametes are formed. But it is not the case in asexual reproduction. Here there is no fusion, so there are no gametes. And single parent is involved. Now when I say single parent is involved and when I say no gametes are formed, do I mean I am only talking about unicellular organism, that is single celled organism? No. I am also talking about certain multicellular organisms. That means asexual reproduction can occur in unicellular, that is single celled organisms, as well multicellular organisms. Okay, it occurs in both organisms, unicellular and multicellular, single celled and many celled organisms. Now, what is the difference in unicellular and multicellular? There are presence of gametes in multicellular, but no gametes are formed. Individually, certain gametes are present in the name of spores, right? But in unicellular, that is not the case. So, gametes are not formed by the fusion, but certain small amount of gametes are present when we talk about a sexual mode of multicellular organisms reproduction, right? Now, what happens in asexual reproduction? As I said, it produces organisms from one single organism. That means it produces, what does it produce? They produce or it produces clones. Now, what are clones? You all know clones. What are clones? You would have watched many English movies and there are so many movies that actually deal with these clones. If you see, there are movies that is based on robots. So one robot is made and all other robots are made identical. Example, the movie I, Robot. There are many robots in that, right? So there are many movies that involve these clones. You know what are clones then? When I say the robots are made exactly same, that means they look alike. Yes, they perform the same way every robot performs action. Yes, that means it's not just the look, even the built-in features are same. So in organisms, I won't say the built-in features and all. What will we say here? In organisms, what are clones? Clones are nothing but the organisms which are morphologically and genetically same. When I say morphologically and genetically same, that means they are same by their shape or by their physical abilities and aspects. Genetically same means the components inside them, the chromosomes inside them, they are also alike. So whenever in unicellular or multicellular asexual reproduction happens, they always produce clones. So you should remember this. Till now you all know there are two different modes of what? A reproduction. What are the two modes? One is sexual reproduction and one is asexual reproduction. Now we know what is asexual reproduction, where only one parent is involved. Now let us know how asexual reproduction occurs in many unicellular or multicellular organisms. That is, I am going to talk about the modes of asexual reproduction. First one out of it is what? Binary fission. It is binary fission. Now, let us first understand what does this word mean. Binary fission. Binary. This word means what? Binary means what? Binary means two. Bi means two. So binary means two. Fission. Nuclear fission. You would have heard fission many places. But what exactly does the word fission mean? Fission means dividing or splitting of something into two or more parts, right? Splitting of something into two or more parts. So here when I say clearly binary fission, I am talking about something splitting into two parts. Now when I am talking binary fission in asexual reproduction, it clearly means that I am talking about an organism that is going to split up into two different organisms, that is clones of the previous one. That is exactly similar to the organism from which it was produced. So binary fission occurs in certain unicellular organisms, and one of it is the most famous microorganism. You all know, you have learnt about it long back, that is amoeba. That is what? Amoeba. Now why is it so famous, amoeba? One simple reason, it is very easy to draw. When I say it is very easy to draw, the reason behind it is, again, it has no shape. It is irregular. So I can draw an amoeba that looks like this. Okay. So I have an amoeba here. Now, amoeba is an organism. Obviously, it should have what? It should have a nucleus. It should have a nucleus. So let's have the nucleus of the amoeba here. Now, when I have the nucleus and have the amoeba here, what happens is, during favorable conditions, when the conditions are in support for this organism to reproduce, what happens is, first the nucleus inside starts dividing. First what happens is the nucleus inside starts dividing. So let us have a nucleus that is going to start dividing, right? So this nucleus here is starting to divide. Once the nucleus starts divides, now what happens is the other parts, that the cytoplasmic part. Now the cytoplasmic part also starts to divide. So I have like this, right? So you can clearly see this was an amoeba, now it's getting splitted up into two parts, right? So when the cytoplasmic division is occurring, obviously the nucleus also is being divided further, right? My nucleus is also being divided further. Now when my nucleus and cytoplasmic part both divides, finally what happens is they both divide into two different parts or two different amoebas. So I get two amoebas here now. Okay, and both the amoebas will have their own nuclei, right? So what happened here? What happened in the entire scenario? I had an amoeba. What did I say? When does they reproduce? An amoeba during what? During favorable conditions. During favorable conditions. What starts to happen? The nucleus starts to divide. So I can say here division of nucleus starts. Once the nucleus starts dividing, what happens is the cytoplasm also starts dividing. That is, the cytoplasmic division occurs here. Cytoplasmic division occurs here. Once the cytoplasm and the nucleus divide, what happens is you get two different amoebas. Correct? So can I say I get two daughter cells? Okay. So from one amoeba, finally we are getting two amoebas. That means one organism gave rise to two organisms. One organism got splitted up or fission occurred, and we got two different organisms thus of the same species. They look alike exactly. They are the clones, right? So this is binary fission, where one single organism divides into two organisms of the same species which looks alike. Now, in amoeba, I showed you a division where the nucleus is dividing in this axis. In this axis means somewhere in an horizontal axis like this. I have started the division. You can see the axis of division, right? It could be a cross-sectional axis. It could be this axis. It could have been any axis. I just drew these lines. I just took the example in this way. And that's why in amoeba, the binary fission occurs irregularly. Occurs what? Irregularly. So if you want to give an example of irregular binary fission, you will give the example of what? Amoeba during favorable conditions. So this is binary fission in amoeba. Today we are going to cover the topic that is budding, which is one of the modes of asexual reproduction. Till now, you all know that reproduction in all the organisms can be sexual or asexual. And in asexual reproduction, there were many different modes or methods of reproduction. One of them is what? Budding. Now, there are certain unicellular, that is single-celled organisms, and certain multicellular organisms, those who perform what? Budding. So we will take an example to understand this mode of asexual reproduction, and to best understand asexual reproduction, we take the example of what? Yeast. We take what? Yeast. Yeast during favorable condition, they perform budding. Okay, what happens here? The parent yeast, or I can say the parent cell here. I will write this is my parent yeast or my parent cell. Obviously, every organism, one of the most important part is what? The nucleus. So let us have the nucleus also here, right? Now what happens during favorable condition? This parent cell or this parent yeast start producing a structure outside over the wall that is known as a bud. This small structure that is being formed here is a bud. That means what? The parent body starts getting deflected or separated and it forms a bud stud. Now, so here the nucleus also tends to be attracted towards the bud. So the nucleus also starts to extend. Now, once the nucleus starts to extend and once the cytoplasmic division also occurs, what happens is the parent here separates the bud, but the bud still remains over the parent. So the parent has its own nucleus here the bud has its own nucleus here, thus producing one daughter yeast. So this is my daughter cell. So one parent produced one daughter yeast. That is my daughter cell. So from the parent cell, a bud was produced. From that bud, the nucleus got separated and went into the bud, and the bud got separated on the body of the current yeast or the parent yeast, forming a daughter cell. Now, this goes on. This performance goes on, and what happens is not a single bud, but the parent forms a bud. The bud in turn forms another bud. The bud in turn form another bud. That means from one parent I am getting chain of daughter cells. So I can say this is my chain of daughter yeast. Understood? So ultimately what happened was a bud was developed. The bud then goes on developing more buds, thus forming a chain of buds. Now this mode of reproduction, budding, can also be seen in one of the other organisms, that is Hydra. Okay, so we shall now see the diagram of Hydra. What happens here in Hydra? See, in Hydra you can see here this hair-like structures. Whatever you have, the hair-like structure is known as what? Hyphae. Now what happens is, in this Hydra also, if you see at the bottom, a bud starts to develop here, right? So this here is a bud, right? The bud starts to develop here. Now the bud then forms, okay, the bud then forms a new small Hydra. You can see it here clearly. And that Hydra, then the cytoplasmic division completes, and that Hydra here finally gets the whole hyphae part as well. And you can see one parent has produced the daughter as well here, right? And ultimately what happens is the parent here separates the bud and you get one Hydra, that is the daughter of the parent. So this is how budding takes place in yeast as well as Hydra. Thank you. Stay tuned to Studi.Live for more such videos. Be on with us.